The night was thick with shadows as I navigated my car along the winding road, cutting through the heart of the forest. The dense canopy overhead blotted out the moon, leaving only the faint glow of my headlights to pierce the darkness. The trees loomed like silent sentinels, their branches reaching out like gnarled fingers, threatening to snatch me from the safety of my vehicle. I glanced nervously at the clock, the numbers glowing ominously in the dim interior of the car. It was later than I had intended to be out here, but I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled over me like a shroud. There was something about this forest, something ancient and primal that whispered to me from the depths of the shadows. As I rounded a bend in the road, a chill ran down my spine. I could swear I heard voices drifting through the trees, faint and indistinct, like the murmurs of ghosts. I shook my head, trying to dispel the sense of dread that was creeping over me. It was just my imagination playing tricks on me, I told myself. Just the wind rustling through the leaves. But then I saw it, a figure standing by the side of the road, its outline barely visible in the gloom. I slammed on the brakes, my heart pounding in my chest as I peered into the darkness. It was a woman, her pale face turned towards me, her eyes shining like twin stars. "Are you all right?" I called out, my voice shaky with fear. She didn't answer, just stood there staring at me with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. And then, without warning, she vanished into the darkness, leaving me alone in the silent forest. I sat there for a moment, my hands trembling on the wheel, trying to make sense of what I had just seen. But there was no rational explanation for it. It was as if she had never been there at all. Shaken but determined to press on, I shifted the car into gear and continued down the road. But with each passing mile, the feeling of unease grew stronger, like a weight pressing down on my chest. And then, just as suddenly as before, I saw her again, standing in the middle of the road, her eyes burning into mine. I slammed on the brakes, swerving to avoid her as my car skidded to a halt. But when I looked back, she was gone, vanished into thin air like a wisp of smoke. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it echoing in my ears, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I had to get out of here, I told myself. I had to get as far away from this place as possible. But as I turned the car around and began to drive back the way I had come, I realized with a sinking feeling that the road ahead seemed to stretch on forever, winding endlessly through the dark heart of the forest. And then I heard it, the sound of whispers echoing through the trees, growing louder and louder until they filled the air like a chorus of the damned. I clapped my hands over my ears, trying to block out the sound, but it was no use. The voices were inside my head now, whispering terrible secrets that sent chills down my spine. I closed my eyes, praying for it to stop, but when I opened them again, I saw her standing in front of me, her eyes shining with a malevolent light. And then, with a suddenness that took my breath away, the forest erupted into chaos. Trees seemed to spring to life around me, their branches reaching out like grasping claws, tearing at my car as if trying to drag me down into the darkness. I screamed, slamming my foot down on the accelerator as I tried to escape, but it was no use. The forest had me now, and there was no way out. And as I hurtled deeper and deeper into the abyss, I knew with a sinking feeling that I would never escape the whispering woods alive. Chapter 1: The Desolate Highway. The headlights cut through the thick veil of darkness as my car hummed along the desolate highway. The moon hung low in the sky, casting eerie shadows that danced across the barren landscape. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, my knuckles turning white with tension as I pressed on through the night. As I drove deeper into the wilderness, a sense of unease settled over me like a suffocating blanket. The road stretched out before me like a twisted serpent, winding its way through the heart of the wilderness. There was something about this place that felt wrong, as if the very air was thick with a sense of foreboding. I glanced at the clock, the numbers glowing ominously in the dim light of the dashboard. It was later than I had intended to be out here, but the urgency of my mission drove me forward. I had to reach my destination, no matter the cost. Suddenly, a figure loomed in the distance, a solitary silhouette standing by the side of the road. My heart leaped into my throat as I approached, my foot instinctively easing off the accelerator. Who would be out here in the middle of nowhere at this hour? As I drew closer, I could see that it was a woman, her form swaying gently in the breeze. Her hair whipped around her face like a shroud, obscuring her features in shadow. I slowed to a stop, my pulse pounding in my ears as I rolled down the window. "Are you all right?" I called out, my voice trembling with uncertainty. She turned to face me, her eyes gleaming like twin orbs in the darkness. "Help me," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the howl of the wind. Without thinking, I reached out to her, my hand hovering in the air between us. But before I could speak, she vanished into thin air, leaving me alone on the desolate highway. I sat there for a moment, my mind reeling with confusion. Had I imagined her? Or was she some kind of apparition, a ghostly presence haunting the wilderness? Shaking off the sense of unease that had settled over me, I shifted the car into gear and continued down the road. But no matter how fast I drove, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that unseen eyes were following my every move. And then, just as suddenly as before, she appeared again, standing in the middle of the road with outstretched arms. I slammed on the brakes, my heart pounding in my chest as I skidded to a halt. "Who are you?" I called out, my voice echoing in the empty night, but she didn't answer, just stood there staring at me with empty eyes. And then, with a suddenness that took my breath away, the shadows around her began to twist and writhe, forming into grotesque shapes that seemed to reach out for me. Terrified, I slammed the car into reverse, my tires spinning as I fought to escape the nightmare unfolding before me. But no matter which way I turned, the shadows followed, closing in around me like a suffocating embrace. And as I hurtled deeper into the abyss, I knew with a sickening certainty that I would never escape the shadows of the forgotten alive.